$1,000 seems like the minimum amount to get a decent gaming PC in 2024. And I don't make the rules. These are PC builds that you guys sent me. The main culprit for this situation is graphics cards. The most essential part. If you don't have one, you're gonna be stuck playing visual novels forever.
Dinner's ready.
They're eating their mom and dad.
For some reason, the best value GPUs right now cost the same as a PS5. Worst of all, neither of these big graphics card manufacturers have actually released one around $200 this generation. So what does this mean for people who just want to buy their first graphics card? What does this mean for people who want to give this PC gaming thing a shot? This is the spiritual follow-up to my previous video on why graphics don't really matter. They're not everything. Fun gameplay is obviously the king.
Guards, to me.
Storytelling and world building within the game is very important, as well as it's not just the graphics themselves that go to make up what a game looks like, but also the art style that the game takes up can really determine how it looks and actually how it performs on your system. So today, I took a 7.5-year-old graphics card, which is the GTX 1070, and you can find this on the used market now for about $100, maybe a little bit less at times. But I also took a scenario with no GPU at all. Can integrated graphics even play anything? Starting off here today with some of the most graphically intensive games that there are. This isn't really to say that you should expect to be able to play any of these games on these systems, but it's more to set the groundwork to see what kind of performance that we're working with. The first up is one of the most impossible ones, and that is Remnant 2. This game was built in Unreal Engine 5, and the integrated graphics in particular really struggle. Like, we're upscaling from 540p on low settings and it's getting us barely 30 FPS, and the game itself looks horrid. Okay, you ready to be blinded? We're gonna turn on potato mode. So yes, this has a settings lower than low, and they actually call it potato. The game looks even worse with this, and the performance isn't even that much better. So we might be limited by something else in the system, but yeah, this is really bad. However, if you can afford a cheap GPU, even this old one like the GTX 1070, it is able to skate by in this game, though it's not all that graceful, but you could maybe play Remnant 2 on a 1070. Cyberpunk, however, wasn't as terrible. No GPU in it was pretty crap though. We're looking at 45 FPS on low settings, rendering up from 540p. It did not look good, but maybe you could play on it if you really wanted to. You get the cinematic experience. The GTX 1070 though was a solid performer at 60 FPS, native 1080p on low settings. Last of Us Part 1. This was another rough game. I was able to do a little bit on the integrated graphics. On low settings, if we ran at FSR balance, so it's probably rendering somewhere within 600p resolution, and using a controller in this game so you don't feel the low frame rate as much, it is actually not that bad on integrated graphics. I mean, this is a type of game that's kind of a walking simulator. You don't have to do a whole lot, so a controller is pretty nice. And on the GTX 1070, I mean, I was able to achieve 60 FPS at 1080p native on low settings. On Plague Tale Requiem, another very demanding, I don't think it's AAA, integrated graphics was able to just get over 30 FPS, and I had to use a ton of upscaling on low settings. Again, 540p. You might be able to get by with this on integrated graphics, but I'm not saying it's good. Now, the GTX 1070 had a similar story to the other games. Like, low settings on this card was completely fine, as close to native as you can get in this game. It always uses upscaling, but again, the same story with Resident Evil 4 Remake. Let's actually get into some games now that you don't kind of make nearly as many compromises with, like running at 540p. And some of these games are my personal favorites that I've ever played in my whole gaming career, or whatever the heck you want to call it. Starting off with some competitive games. We all know that competitive games are very graphically light, and it's part of what makes them so popular and accessible, along with their almost endless replayability. It's something you can always jump on and play with friends. It shouldn't really surprise you that a 7.5-year-old GTX 1070 in competitive games still is no joke. And Apex, Counter-Strike 2, Fortnite, Overwatch 2, and they all run at over 100 FPS at 1080p. And in some of these cases, you can even push it up to 1440p and still have a snappy experience. The only game that was genuinely giving me issues was a new game called The Finals. And this competitive multiplayer shooter, it was definitely harder to run. It's just like, it's new technology and Unreal Engine 5 and stuff. But like, if you do look at it, like you step back and look at it, the GTX 1070 was still performing pretty well in this game. Just not over 100 FPS at 1080p or anything like that. The integrated GPU, I couldn't really say the same for it. Counter-Strike 2 was the best game that I tested, and I'm not going to sit here and say that 100 average FPS for this game is good. Like, it's not terrible, I guess. But if you really want to be competitive in Counter-Strike 2, you know most people are running in the hundreds. Also, in Fortnite, I had to drop down to the performance API, and then the performance was pretty good after I did that, but the performance API looks like total garbage. I mean, this mode doesn't even have anti-aliasing. Yeah, there's jaggedy lines everywhere and shimmering, and it does not look great. The rest of the other competitive games on integrated graphics were really not as good unless you wanted to use some upscaling or something like that. And even Overwatch 2, that game surprised me. I thought this game would run on integrated graphics fine, but it doesn't seem like it does. But you know, what if there are games that aren't competitive? So that's why we're introducing light games. And Ghost Runner is the first one we're going to talk about. Ghost Runner is a fun, fast, tactical platformer that is single player. And honestly, I'm going to say it, this is like the next Doom in terms of optimization.
This looks so good. Like, holy f***, this is a low setting.
We're getting just a little over 60 FPS on integrated graphics. So it's definitely playable, especially for this title. I mean, you could ask for more, but it's really not bad at all. This next one deceived me. This game is called Risk of Rain 2, a roguelike where you drop in with nothing, and if you die, you lose everything. And your goal is to last as long as possible or beat the final boss by collecting different items as you go and building up your character. But this really wasn't all that playable. You might think that like 90 FPS, it looks pretty good, but we were running on integrated graphics at 720p low settings, especially when you get later in the game in Risk of Rain 2. You know, it can get really insane with all the stuff on screen, and your FPS can drop a lot. You could die in an instant, and you need fast reaction times and enough frames to understand what the heck is happening, and you best not be having any stutters. Raft is one of my all-time favorites. This is a slower paced game. I kind of think of Raft is like a tech mod pack for Minecraft. I mean, you're literally put on a raft and you're able to make this thing like a floating factory. All at the same time, you progress through a story, you unlock new things for your capitalistic industrial complex to take over the ocean or whatever you do in Raft. This was the same story kind of as Risk of Rain on the integrated graphics. The thing about it, in Raft, you don't really need a high FPS in this game. I mean, it's overall pretty chill. A recent find of mine, and probably many of you, this game is very popular now, is called Lethal Company.
Bro, what?
This is a game where the company is almost as friendly as Nvidia. You just got to give them all your money and maybe your best friend's body, and they'll be happy. It's mad, bro.
Phoenix.
And sometimes this happens. Oh my God, fuck you. In terms of performance, I mean, you probably wouldn't be surprised at these PlayStation 1 era looking graphics, that this runs just fine with no graphics card in your system. This game itself, Lethal Company, doesn't even have graphics settings in the menu. If that tells you anything, this game just does not give a shit. And expect nothing less with the GTX 1070 in this game. I mean, the only thing that limits the 1070 is for some reason there's like a VSync that locks the game at your monitor's refresh rate. I mean, that's the only thing that's holding the 1070 back. You know, it'd be going absolutely wild here. Speaking of the 1070, you probably noticed that I haven't even mentioned it in any of these games. And that's because like, it ran really well. Like, I didn't even bother to test the GTX 1070 at anything lower than 1440p because it was just so clean, bro. If you are interested in playing like lighter titles like this and you have a cheaper GPU or an older one, it very well might get you by, and this might be one of the reasons why you haven't upgraded your system. The only thing I would say about an older graphics card like the 1070, I'm a little worried about Nvidia the stopping driver updates for a card like this. I mean, it's 7.5 years old. But moving on to our scariest and most demanding game. I was really worried that the GTX 1070 wasn't going to be able to run this game, but it looks like it's able to pull by. In this section, I'm including some games that pretty much run on anything unless you're literally playing on a microwave or something. So these are all games that I like a lot. We gotta talk about Stardew Valley. This game is kind of like Raft in a way. I love being a degenerate capitalist in here as well that destroys the world for own personal gain.
Another hard day on the farm in my giant house with no wife because I'm on that Sigma grind set. No furniture either. I just want to flex.
It is a blast to build up your farm and morph it into literally whatever you want, or maybe manipulate society and the characters in it to do what you want them to do if you're just a masochist. The only downside about it is it does have a 60 FPS cap. So if you wanted to play competitive Stardew Valley, I'm not sure if that's happening, man. I'm sorry to tell you, but our next game is Death Must Die. This is a roguelike that is so wildly addicting. Like, I was testing for this video and it hooked me in so much with this gameplay loop that I almost wasted way too much time playing it and not actually getting any testing done. So this is one of those copycat vampire survivor type games, kind of like Hollow Cure or Halls of Torment. All these games are really good and I can't really complain. Death Must Die in particular does its progression within the game oh so well. It is, ooh. As you play, you unlock new gods or mythological characters that you interact with that give you different spells or abilities to spice up your runs, make it different, get different RNG every single time. All of these characters are voice acted.
Hey, you're the one Time gave their hourglass to, huh?
You can also, as you play, you get new challengers, so different characters to try for yourself, different gameplay styles. As you go in every single time for a run, you get different loot to customize your base build to make yourself stronger. So along with each run going in, your skill is getting better at surviving and lasting longer. Also, your gear is gonna build up and get better, so you can venture deeper into a run. Also, the devs, they put their assets in the right places.
Yeah, but they literally added jiggle physics. Give us a full screen model. Come on, guys.
Obviously, this game, it wouldn't surprise you, it runs like a dream. Even with tons of enemies on screen, it doesn't really matter. On to Hollow Knight. Does this game need any introduction? I mean, I literally use the music from Hollow Knight in almost all of my videos. You probably heard it earlier in this one. I don't even know. Editing Vex, I don't know what he did. This game is really good at rewarding exploration and giving you tons of challenging bosses to overcome to progress. Changed the way I viewed gaming just a few years ago when I played it. And maybe one day Hollow Knight will actually get its sequel. What is Silk Song? It's like the #1 wishlisted game on Steam. I don't even know. But then with these titles, there's also the classics like Terraria and Minecraft, and I have hundreds of hours in these games, so they're great. That's actually the beauty of PC gaming. I mean, it's the sheer amount of options that we have. It's not only with the games themselves, but the type of hardware we can have in our systems, being able to upgrade when it feels right for you. And trust me, like making content in the tech space, like it can feel like this is this big community or echo chamber that kind of convinces each other that we need to upgrade our hardware, or that like other people can help you cope with overspending on your hardware and your computer. One of my favorite games recently is not like Alan Wake 2. It's not like Cyberpunk, Starfield, all these demanding games out there graphically. It's actually a game like Lethal Company. And Lethal Company is definitely not a graphical masterpiece, but this is the most creative game. Gold bar. Oh shit, I'm glad I went over here. Oh my god, I'm 92 pounds already. You're so slippery too. It's like you kind of slide. Oh shit.
They hit me like 3 times. Shit. Come this way. Come this way, bees. You come this way.
I grabbed it. I don't know if other homie over there. Wait, did he die? Rip. Let's leave. It is a blast with friends or even just random people online. It is hilarious. I'll give you a nice pat on the head before I go. All right, bye. So, Lethal Company, actually, funnily enough, uses its like awful graphics. You know, it's an advantage. It makes it accessible. Also, it makes it charming. And don't get me wrong here. Like, I actually really enjoy graphics. They can be absolutely stunning. Like, I played Avatar Frontiers of Pandora and I was like, whoa. But the value that we're getting buying GPUs, like, I mean, it's barely getting better, guys, especially at the lower end of the market. Like, this lower end is what introduces people to PC gaming. And that's the worst part. If the best value entry point to PC gaming is $500+ at this point in time, like, who's gonna get into PC gaming? Like, it could be funny to joke around with people, like, get your money up, but at the same time, like, when housing is getting more expensive, when food is getting more expensive, like the essentials, like, how the fuck are we gonna pay for an overpriced graphics card? I started with a $100 GTX 770. To think that we would be in 2024 and maybe at this point, I wouldn't have expected it. I thought things were gonna get better over time, but that's not exactly what we're seeing. That's why I made this video. I wanted to show some games that can run on all kinds of hardware. And did I mention that a lot of these games are actually insanely affordable? So there's also all kinds of games that you guys have probably played that are like this. So if you do have any suggestions, leave them in the comments. I'd actually love to see them. But hopefully you guys actually have a system that's good enough to play the games that you want to play. And hopefully this video helped. Have a good one. Okay, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.